live.
Everybody.
1, 2, I'm live.
All right, we should give it a few minutes here. We're having a 2-hour lunch very early. We went to break, got back in for break, and Leventhal was cross-examining Sheriff Joseph Lombardo, who is our witness today. And at that time, Jackson asked to approach the bench because Burleson was having a medical issue. They let the jury leave, and he said that he's possibly going to have a seizure. He was shaking. He got very pale. And so it looks like they took him out. They may have called the paramedics. We're not really sure what they're doing up there, but they told us all to come back in 2 hours. So we won't be back today until 12:30, and then at that time I guess we'll find out if we're going to continue with the day or if we're going to cancel yet another day of this trial. Put in a half day, I guess you could kind of call it, 2 hours. So today, obviously, the government called Sheriff Joe Lombardo. He was the under sheriff, I believe, on the day of April the 12th, the Bundy Ranch. He was part of the team that took Sheriff Gillespie to the rally point to talk on the stage, and then after that he went to the BLM and was at the BLM to protect the BLM and do crowd. He was also stated that he was the one that made the decision to let the cattle go or release the cattle. They brought up a picture, and in the picture they showed Shannon Kelly. They showed all of the police officers, the sheriff, the undersheriff, Tom Roberts, they're all there. And then Shannon Kelly in plain clothes. And they said Shannon Kelly was the one to notify Metro that the crowd was leaving the area after the 1 hour they had given the sheriff to come back and talk to them. When he didn't arrive, that's when they decided to leave. At that point, Lombardo was with his Metro team down the road, and they came in with the protesters at the same time. Of course, he kept calling them participants today. They weren't protesters. He was calling them participants in the crowd. He refused to say protesters. He talks about when he got down there, he was with the officers that made the skirmish line. He said that at one point he crossed over to the northbound bridge and had a conversation with Dave Bundy because communication is key to de-escalating a situation. He was also part of a conversation with Dave Bundy, Ryan Bundy, and Dan Love. After in the video that you see them go over the gate, he was part of that conversation. And at the end of his testimony, he said that he was also privy to a conversation between Ryan Bundy and Cliven Bundy over the phone after they had decided they were going to release the cattle, where they were trying to tell Ryan to tell Cliven that they requested his presence at the impound site so that he may be the one to pull the pin from the gate. We also watched a little excerpt of Dan Love talking with Ryan and Dave and telling them that he did not authorize them to release the cattle, and if they do that, then they're going to be held responsible. And I think he said that a couple times. And they really pushed that, trying to get Cliven down to pull the pin out of the gate. This is a hugely important part of this conspiracy. I think it goes to prove that there's more a conspiracy from the government to try to entrap the Bundy family, and I think that it's becoming obvious in the courtroom. He said he did testify that when he went down into the wash, and that it was after noon, and the BLM had already moved back, that there was still participants pointing guns at him and his people, and they were, what did he say? Defenseless. They were defenseless. He was asked where they were pointing them from, and he said from the crowd in the wash and the embutments underneath the southbound bridge.
This is Lombardo. We did his news interview that's out there.
We're hoping we're not through all the cross-examination. We were only, 3 people in when Greg had his medical issue.
Yeah, because he has an interview where he talks a whole different story.
Exactly. So in his testimony, he said he would would have taken 500 officers. Now, he said the crowd was around 300 people, but for him to feel safe, he would have needed 500 officers to provide security for that crowd with weapons. The crowd was not passive, and he chose to negotiate instead of ask for more officers because of the timeline when those officers would arrive would not be acceptable. So he decided to de-escalate, and it was elevating every moment. The crowd was told an hour, and they were running out of time, and he was given another half an hour, and then advised that that half an hour was over. That was the end of his testimony. Is that he's there? He decided to de-escalate because they couldn't get enough officers there, and the tensions were rising with every moment because he was given an hour, then given an additional half an hour, and his time was running out. When Tomasi went up to cross-examination, he was asked if he was aware that the BLM was supposed to cease all operations. He said he had no prior knowledge, and Gillespie had told him they were trying to broker a deal with the BLM on the 11th. Then he was asked if he was aware that the sheriff had a conversation with Governor Sandoval. And that he wasn't, okay, so that was allowed. He said yes, he did know of that conversation, and then when they tried to go into it further, it was objected to, not relevant, and they had to move on. We all know what he's trying to get in is Governor Sandoval's comment. When you get there on the 12th, he's not charged. He was put in charge after they went down to the impound site, and I believe he was at post 1 most of the time with the skirmish line. He said he was not in fear of the BLM, and it was brought up that, well, there's two parties to this. There's the crowd, and then there's the BLM. Why are you not concerned about the BLM pointing weapons? And he kind of skirted that question by saying there was three groups: the BLM, the protesters, and Metro. And I wrote protesters, but I'm probably sure he said crowd or participants. When Marchese went up there, he asked, like, obviously the cattle was the BLM's objective, not Metro. He brought up that communication is key to de-escalating the situation, and kind of like leading to the fact that the BLM didn't really have any communication with the protesters, and that was part of the reason that it escalated to where it did. He talked about one guy from Highway Patrol being there. He walked down to the wash 3 times, and this is where his story kind of gets funny. He's like, well, he can't give a timeline to any of the times that it went down, but he did say the first time he went down, the BLM was already moved back, and that the people were pointing weapons. Then there was a second time with the meeting with Ammon, and the third time was when he escorted the cowboys on their horses to the cattle. Then at the end, he was asked if he ever personally filled out any reports, because it sounds like the FBI interviewed him and made a report for him, but no, he never personally filled out any reports. Then we go to Perez. He was talking about there was no formal briefing. He came to find out on the 12th that the BLM had ceased operations when he went to Gillespie's home to discuss their meeting with the Bundys. He had a briefing with Love for 45 minutes, and this is kind of confusing too. Like, was his briefing before he was with the Metro officers on the side of the road, or after they had reached the compound? It's really unclear because his testimony kind of went back and forth. He was asked, when you told Love you wanted to release the cattle, was he resistant? He said yes. Love said that they were federal cattle, and it was his decision to release them or not. Then, between 30 minutes to an hour later, he went ahead and made the decision to release the cattle. So he's kind of saying, you're getting the feeling that he doesn't like Love, and Love was trying to escalate the situation. Then he was asked if Dave Bundy was directing anyone up on the bait, or the reason that when he went to talk to the participants, that he chose Dave Bundy, and it was merely because he was part of the Bundy family, and he was not directing anyone up on the bridge. Then Jackson got up, said, you wanted to detected bloodbath. You told your officers not to wear their riot gear and vests to de-escalate the situation. And that was pretty much it. Leventhal started, but he was not able to get very far before Jackson had his medical issues. And so we are going to wait 2 hours and see if we get to continue with the day.
We're going to have another live update later on.